The first thing I do every morning is check my scent. Not my face, not my hair, my scent. I press 2 fingers to the side of my throat, right where the gland sits, and I wait for the phantom heat that isn't really there yet, just my body reminding me it could betray me if I let it. Then I take the suppressant. Then I take the second pill, the blocker, dissolved under my tongue until it's bitter and gone. Only after that do I let myself look in the mirror and become Han Yusung, VP of Strategy, the man nobody in this building has ever smelled as anything other than nothing at all. I've done this every single day for 9 years. I don't remember what I smelled like before that. So when Director O tells me, 20 minutes into Monday's leadership meeting, that outside counsel has been brought in to investigate the whistleblower complaint against my division, I don't flinch. I've survived worse mornings than this one. I fold my hands on the table and I say calmly, of course, we have nothing to hide, and I mean it mostly, and I think that will be the end of it. Then the door opens and it isn't. He's younger than I expected. That's the first thing. I'd built up some gray, humorless auditor in my head, someone who smells like old paper and disapproval, and instead a man walks in wearing a suit that fits like it was made for exactly his shoulders and no one else's, and the room goes very slightly quieter the way rooms do around certain alphas, the ones who don't have to try. Kang Tiju, he says, and doesn't offer his hand around the table, just a short bow, efficient, already pulling out the chair across from mine like he's done this 100 times and expects to do it 100 more. I'll be reviewing Strategy's Q3 documentation starting today. His eyes land on me for exactly 1 second longer than they land on anyone else. I tell myself I imagine it. I don't like him. I decide this within the first 5 minutes, the way you decide you don't like whether that's about to ruin your plans. He asks precise questions in a flat, unbothered voice, and every time I answer he makes a small mark in his notebook that I can't see, and it makes my stomach twist with something that isn't quite fear and isn't quite anything I want to name. By the time the meeting ends, I've said maybe 40 words to him total, and I feel more exposed than I have in years. He's just doing his job, I tell myself in the elevator afterward, alone, watching the numbers climb. You've handled worse than one lawyer with good posture. I don't believe myself even a little. The rest of the day is meetings and reports and the low hum of my own discipline holding everything together, and I think I've gotten through it. I think I've survived Kang Tiju for one day until 6:30 when my assistant knocks and tells me he's asked to see the raw procurement files. Tonight, before the board packet goes out tomorrow. Tell him it can wait until morning, I say, already reaching for my coat. He said it can't. Of course he did. He's in the small conference room on the 11th floor when I get there, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the forearm, 3 different folders fanned out in front of him like a man playing a game, only he understands the rules of. The overhead lights are off, someone must have turned them off hours ago and never come back, so the only light is the one lamp on the table, throwing everything into a warm, private kind of dark that feels wrong for what this is supposed to be. A compliance review, nothing more. You didn't have to come yourself, he says without looking up. You didn't have to demand it tonight. That gets his eyes up. For a moment neither of us says anything and I become too aware of how quiet the floor is at this hour, how it's just the two of us and the hum of the building settling around us, how close he's sitting to the chair I'm about to take. I sit anyway. I don't know why I sit anyway. We work for almost 2 hours. It's tedious, ordinary work, numbers, dates, cross-references, and somewhere in the second hour something shifts that I can't point to exactly. Maybe it's the way he stops writing things down and starts just listening when I explain a discrepancy, like he actually wants to understand it instead of catch me in it. Maybe it's the low sound of his voice when he finally says, "You run a tight division. Whoever filed this complaint either got it very wrong or very specific, and there's something almost like respect in it, something I haven't heard directed at me in longer than I want to admit. Or maybe it's just that it's late and the light is low and I've forgotten just for a second, just long enough to be dangerous, to hold myself the way I always hold myself." "You're not what I expected," he says suddenly, setting down his pen. My chest goes tight, meaning everyone downstairs talks about you like you're a wall, but you argue like someone who actually cares whether this company survives its own mistakes. He tilts his head, studying me in a way that makes my skin feel too warm, too thin. That's rarer than you'd think in this building. I don't have an answer ready. I never don't have an answer ready. That's the whole architecture of who I've made myself into, and the fact that I don't right now scares me more than anything he's said tonight. It's late, I manage, standing too fast, gathering folders I don't actually need to gather. We should finish this tomorrow. He doesn't argue, he just watches me with those unreadable eyes as I move toward the door, and right as my hand touches the handle, he says, quiet, almost to himself, like he didn't mean for me to hear it at all. You smell like nothing, Director Han. Do you know how strange that is? I freeze with my hand on the door. Because suppressants block scent, they don't make you smell like nothing, not to anyone whose senses aren't extraordinary. And Kang Tae-ju just told me, without meaning to, exactly how much he's already been paying attention. I know something is wrong before I understand what it is. It's Thursday, 4 days after that night in the 11th floor conference room, and I've barely slept since, not because of the audit, though the audit is still crawling through every file in my division like a slow-moving storm, but because of 5 words I can't stop turning over. You smell like nothing, Director Han. I've told myself a dozen times that it means nothing, that he was making an observation, nothing more. I've almost believed it by the time I walk into the 10th floor boardroom for the quarterly leadership review. 14 executives, 1 long table. Kang Tae-ju sitting 3 seats down from mine with his notebook open, not looking at me, which I've decided is a mercy. 40 minutes in, my stomach drops. It's small at first, a warmth low in my belly that I mistake for nerves. A prickle along the back of my neck that I mistake for the air conditioning being too weak for this many bodies in one room. I press my knees together under the table and reach for the water glass with a hand that isn't quite steady, and that's when I understand, with a cold, plummeting horror, exactly what's happening to me. No. I took the suppressant this morning. I always take the suppressant. But there was a batch recall 2 weeks ago that I dismissed because switching brands mid-cycle felt riskier than trusting 1 more week of the old bottle. And now, in the middle of a room with 14 people who have spent 9 years believing I don't have a scent at all, my body is starting to remember that it does. Heat climbs up my throat. My palms go damp against the folder in front of me. Someone across the table, Director O, pauses mid-sentence and sniffs, once confused, and I feel the exact moment the room starts to notice, a ripple of shifting eyes and stilled breath, and my heart is slamming so hard I can hear it in my own ears. I don't see him move, I just hear his voice, sudden and flat and utterly in control, cutting cleanly through the murmur. There's a ventilation issue on this floor, facilities flagged it an hour ago. We'll reconvene in the West Conference Room. A pause, not a question. Director Han, stay, I need 5 minutes on the procurement discrepancy before you go. It's a lie, a perfect, seamless lie, delivered so evenly that not one person questions it. Chairs scrape back. 14 people file out without a second glance at me, and I am shaking too hard to be grateful yet, too far gone into panic to do anything but sit there with my nails digging into my palms while the door closes behind the last of them. And then I hear the lock turn. Tae-ju, his name comes out of me broken, and I don't even register that I've used it without the title until it's already said. I know, he's crouched in front of my chair now, not touching me, hands loose at his sides, and his voice has dropped into something low and steady, the kind of voice you'd use on something wounded and about to bolt. I know, Yusung, you're safe, no one's coming in. They saw my throat is closing, they smelled. They smelled a ventilation problem. His jaw is tight, but his eyes stay soft, fixed on mine, and I realize with a lurch that he isn't looking at me like I'm something shameful. He's looking at me like I'm something he's afraid of frightening. That's the story, that's the only story. I made sure of it before I said a word. I want to believe him, I'm too far gone to do anything but need to. The heat is worse now, pulling low and insistent through my whole body, and shame comes right behind it, hot and suffocating. 9 years of discipline unraveling in front of the one man who spent 4 days quietly noticing everything about me I thought I'd erased. I press the heel of my hand against my eyes. I don't have anything with me, I don't have my emergency dose, Then we wait it out. He says it simply like it costs him nothing, though I can see now this close in the low light with the blinds drawn, the tension banked in his shoulders, the careful way he's breathing through his mouth instead of his nose. He's an alpha sitting 3 feet from an omega in the first raw wave of an unplanned heat, and he hasn't moved an inch closer than I need him to. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not going to touch you unless you ask me to. Do you understand? My whole body is trembling from the heat, from fear, from something underneath both of those that I don't have a name for yet. and I look at him, really look at him, at the restraint written into every line of him, and something in my chest that has been locked for 9 years cracks straight down the middle. Tiju, my voice barely holds, come here. He doesn't move at first, just searches my face like he needs to be sure, like my asking once isn't enough for him to trust it. And when I reach for his hand myself, when I pull him toward me with fingers that won't stop shaking, he makes a low sound in his throat that isn't quite a word and closes the last of the distance himself. What happens after that is slow and careful and nothing like the panic that started it. His hands finding my face first, not anywhere else, his mouth against my temple before it ever reaches mine, like he's giving me 100 chances to stop him and refusing every one I don't take. The locked door holds. The city keeps moving 14 floors below us, indifferent. And for the first time in 9 years, I let someone see exactly what I am, and I am not ashamed of it, not with him, not tonight. It isn't until much later, when the heat has finally loosened its grip and I'm lying against his chest listening to his heartbeat slow, that his phone buzzes against the table. He reaches for it without thinking, silences it, and I catch, just for a second, the name lighting up the screen before it goes dark again. Mother St. Bernadette's Hospital. His whole body goes rigid under my cheek. He doesn't explain the call. He silences it, sets the phone face down on the table, and by the time he looks back at me, his expression has smoothed over into something careful and composed, like a door quietly shutting. Sorry, he says, work. It's not work, I know it's not work. I saw the name Mother St. Bernadette's, but I don't push. Not tonight. Not with my whole body still loose and unfamiliar from the heat, not with his heartbeat still slowing under my ear. I tell myself there will be another moment for it. I don't yet know how wrong that instinct is. 3 days pass before we're alone again, and in those 3 days I do something I haven't done in 9 years. I let myself think about a person instead of a schedule. I catch myself remembering the exact weight of his hand against my jaw. I catch myself checking my phone for a message that never comes, and hating myself a little for the disappointment when it doesn't. So when he texts me Tuesday night, still at the office, come look at the vendor ledger with me, something's not adding up, I don't pretend I'm not smiling at my own reflection in the elevator glass. The 11th floor is empty again, the same lamp burning low over the same table, and this time when I sit across from him, there's no audit pretense holding us apart, no ventilation lie to hide behind. Just the two of us and the quiet and 4 ledgers he clearly could have finished alone. You didn't need me for this, I say, watching him not look up. No, he agrees, I didn't. The honesty of it lands somewhere low in my chest, warm and unsteady. I don't know what to do with a man who tells the truth so plainly it almost hurts. Then why? Because I wanted to see you. He sets the pen down and finally meets my eyes, and there's none of the careful blankness from 3 nights ago, just him, tired around the eyes, more open than I've ever seen him. I've been telling myself all week it was a mistake, that it happened because your body was in crisis and mine reacted the way any alphas would. I've been telling myself that since Thursday. My throat goes dry, and I don't believe it. He says it low, almost angry at himself for the admission. I've wanted to touch you since the first night in this room, before any of it started. That's the part I can't explain away. The silence after that isn't empty, it's full, charged, the kind of silence that has weight and heat and a pulse of its own. I feel my own breath go shallow, feel the old instinct to retreat behind composure rising in me out of habit, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I don't reach for it. I don't do this, I tell him, and my voice shakes despite everything I want it not to. I haven't let anyone close in 9 years, not because I didn't want to, because the last time I did, it cost me everything. Tell me. So I do, haltingly in pieces, the mentor who outed me to a boardroom to clear a path for someone else's promotion. The year afterward, when I couldn't walk into a meeting without imagining every I already knew, the suppressants and the blockers and the version of myself I built brick by brick so it could never happen again. He listens without interrupting, without the practiced sympathy people usually perform, and when I finally stop, he reaches across the table, slow, giving me every chance to pull back, and covers my hand with his. I'm not him, he says simply. I know that's not enough. I know you can't just decide to believe it, but I need you to know I see what it cost you to say that out loud, and I'm not going to make you regret it. Something in me that has been braced for 9 years finally, quietly lets go. He comes around the table this time instead of waiting for me to close the distance, and when he kisses me it's nothing like the desperate, heat-driven blur of Thursday night. It's slow, deliberate, his hand cradling my jaw like something worth being careful with, and I feel my composure dissolve entirely under the patience of it. We don't make it back to my apartment. We barely make it to the small couch against the window, city lights bleeding gold through the blinds, his mouth trailing unhurried heat down my throat while my fingers twist into his shirt, and every nerve in my body lights up like it's the first time all over again, because it is, in a way. The first time either of us has done this without heat forcing our hands. The first time it's simply want, plain and mutual and terrifying in how much I don't want it to stop. Afterward, tangled together on a couch too small for both of us, his fingers trace slow, absent circles against my spine, and I feel, for one suspended hour, like the version of myself I buried at 23 might still exist somewhere underneath all the discipline. "Stay tonight," I murmur against his chest. "I can't." His voice is quiet, apologetic, but there's a tightness underneath it that wasn't there a moment ago. "I have somewhere to be early." "The hospital," I say it before I can stop myself. His whole body goes still against mine. "It's my mother," he says finally, carefully, like each word is being chosen from a very short, very guarded list. "She's not well, that's all I want to say about it tonight." I nod, and I don't push, because I understand guarding something too well to demand someone else hand theirs over before they're ready. But as he dresses in the low light, buttoning his shirt with his back to me, his phone buzzes once more against the table, and this time I see the full message light up the screen before he silences it. "Grandfather says the contract signing can't wait past the new year. She's asking for you." Contract, not treatment, not visitation. Contract. I don't ask. I tell myself it's none of my business yet, that whatever it is, he'll tell me when he's ready, the same grace I asked of him not 5 minutes ago. But my heart is pounding for a different reason now, cold instead of warm, and long after he's gone, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, turning that single word over and over until it stops making any kind of sense I can live with. For 6 days after that night, I let myself believe the word contract meant something ordinary. A business arrangement his family needed him for, a hospital procedure requiring a legal signature. I built explanations out of nothing because the alternative, that Kang Tae-ju was keeping something from me the size of his own life, was too large to hold while I was still learning how to be touched again. He's gentler with me in those 6 days than I've ever let anyone be. He shows up with coffee exactly the way I take it without asking. He falls asleep once with his head in my lap while I read reports, and I sit very still for an hour so I don't wake him, memorizing the unguarded slackness of his face like I'm afraid it won't come again. Friday night he stays until morning for the first time, and when I wake up to him tracing slow lines down my spine in the gray early light, murmuring my name like it's something he's still getting used to being allowed to say, I let myself believe fully, stupidly, completely, that whatever the contract is, it doesn't touch us. I find out how wrong I am on Monday morning in the company cafeteria over someone else's phone screen. "Did you see this?" one of the junior associates says to another, not lowering her voice, not knowing I'm 3 feet behind her in line. "Kang Holdings just put out the engagement announcement. It's all over the finance boards." I don't mean to look, my eyes go to the screen the way eyes go to a car accident, helpless and too late to stop themselves. Kang Tae-ju, heir apparent of Kang Holdings, to bond with Song Ji-woo, and my whole body goes cold before I even finish the sentence, because I know that name. I know that name the way you know the name of the person who was standing next to you the day your life fell apart. Song Ji-woo, the junior colleague who sat 2 desks from mine 9 years ago, the one who told everyone what she'd overheard about my dynamic, laughing about it in a break room she didn't know I could hear from. The one whose whispered gossip became the reason I locked myself behind 9 years of suppressants in the first place. Arranged bonding to proceed before the new year, pending final family approval. The tray in my hands hits the counter harder than I mean it to. I don't remember walking out of the cafeteria. I don't remember the elevator, or the 11th floor, or how I end up standing in front of his office door with my whole body shaking so hard my teeth are chattering in a building that isn't cold at all. He looks up when I walk in. Whatever he sees on my face makes him stand immediately, hands already lifting like he wants to reach for me, and stops himself. "Yu-sung. Tell me it's a mistake." My voice comes out smaller than I want it to, and I hate that even now some part of me is still begging to be told a lie I could survive. Tell me the article is wrong. He doesn't. That's how I know before he even opens his mouth. He doesn't move to deny it, doesn't reach for his phone to correct some clerical error. He just stands there, jaw tight, and the silence stretches long enough to be its own answer. It's not a mistake, he says finally, quiet, wrecked. It's real. It's been real since before the audit ever started. The room tilts. Before, my voice cracks straight down the middle. You knew, this whole time, the boardroom, the locked door last week, this morning you knew and you let me. My mother is dying, Yusung. It comes out of him like something torn loose, the first time I've ever heard him raise his voice. The treatment that could save her requires a bonded pair, a genetic match my grandfather secured years ago through Jiwoo's family. I've been fighting the timeline for months, telling myself I'd find another way before it came to this, and then I met you, and I told myself the pull between us wasn't real enough to matter, because I couldn't afford for it to be real. I couldn't let myself hope for something I already knew I couldn't keep. So you decided for both of us. My hands are trembling so hard I press them flat against my sides just to stop the shaking from showing. You decided I didn't get to know I was standing in the middle of someone else's contract. You let me tell you the worst thing that ever happened to me, and you didn't think to mention that the person who caused it is the person you're about to bond with. His face goes white. Jiwoo, that's the same. Yes, the word comes out flat, hollowed out. The same Jiwoo who ended my career at 23 is about to become your bonded mate. Do you understand what you've done? Do you understand what it means that I let you see me, all of me, while you were already promised to the person who taught me I could never let anyone see me at all? I didn't know. His voice breaks on it. I swear to you, Yusung, I didn't know that was her. Would it have mattered? I ask, and the question isn't cruel, it's just true, and the way his silence answers it is worse than anything he could have said. Would you have told me any of this ever if I hadn't seen it on a stranger's phone in a cafeteria? He doesn't answer. He can't. And in the space where his answer should be, something in my chest that spent 6 days learning how to be soft again closes itself back up, fast and final, like a door slamming somewhere deep inside me that I don't think will ever open the same way twice. Yusung, please. He steps toward me and I step back, and the distance between us feels like the only honest thing left in the room. Don't. My voice comes out steadier than I feel, steadier than I have any right to feel, with my whole body still shaking. I spent 9 years building a wall so no one could do this to me again. I let you take it down brick by brick, and the whole time you were already standing on the other side of it, promised to someone else. I make it to the door before my composure threatens to give out entirely, and I turn back only once because I need him to hear this part clearly. I hope the treatment works. I hope your mother lives, but I'm done being someone's secret while he plans a wedding to somebody else. I walk out before he can answer, and I make it exactly to the stairwell before my knees give out, and it's there, sitting on the cold concrete steps with my back against the wall and my hand pressed hard against my mouth to keep the sound in, that I finally let myself do the math I've been avoiding for 6 days. My last cycle was supposed to come a week ago. It never did. The test sits on the bathroom counter for 11 minutes before I let myself look at it. I don't call anyone. I don't tell anyone. I sit on the bathroom floor with the test in my hand, and I think about a boardroom 9 years ago and a locked door 2 weeks ago and a name on a phone screen that turned my whole chest to ice. And I make a decision the only way I know how to make decisions, quietly, alone, with my spine straight and my face arranged into something no one else will be able to read. I resign the following Monday. Director O tries to talk me out of it in his office, tells me the board is drafting a formal offer to make me his successor within the year, and I let him say all of it, and then I tell him calmly that I've accepted a position overseas that starts in 6 weeks. It isn't true yet. It becomes true 2 days later when I call an old professor with contacts in a Busan logistics firm and ask, without explaining why, whether the opening she'd mentioned last spring is still available. It is. I take it before I let myself think twice. I don't see Tiju again in those 6 weeks. I make sure of it. Different entrance, different elevator bank, a week of remote work I invent excuses for. He texts twice. Please talk to me. Then 4 days later I broke it off with Jiwoo. I need you to know that, whatever else you decide. I read both messages standing in my kitchen at midnight with my hand pressed flat against my stomach, and I don't answer either one because I don't trust myself not to fold the second I hear his voice, and folding is a luxury I can't afford anymore. Not with what's growing inside me, not with what his family has already proven they're capable of using. I tell myself it's protecting the baby. I tell myself it's the only sane choice left. I don't examine too closely how much of it is also protecting myself. I find out much later from Director O in an offhand comment during my last week, the kind of detail dropped without knowing what it costs the person hearing it, that Tiju spent those same 6 weeks tearing his own family apart from the inside. He confronted his grandfather in front of the full Kang board, apparently demanding proof that the treatment his mother needed actually required a bonded pair at all. And when the old man couldn't produce a single medical document to support it, when it became clear the requirement had been invented to force a merger between two family fortunes disguised as a miracle cure, Tiju didn't apologize his way out of the room. He walked out with his mother's full medical file under his arm and 3 independent specialists lined up by that evening, and the engagement to Song Jiwoo was formally dissolved within the week, quietly, without a second announcement, like the first one had never happened at all. I should feel vindicated. Mostly I just feel tired and something colder underneath the tired because it changes nothing that matters. He didn't lie to save his mother. He lied because he never believed what was happening between us was real enough to fight for until it was almost too late, and knowing the contract was built on nothing doesn't undo the 6 days he let me fall for a man who was already promised to someone else. By the time he finds out the truth, I've already given my notice. By the time he comes looking, O tells me this too later in the same offhand way, I've already left the country for a 2-week handover training in Osaka that I arranged specifically so I wouldn't have to be reachable. He goes to my apartment. The landlord tells him I've moved out. He goes to my parents' house in Daegu, and my mother, who has never once approved of anything about my life she didn't choose herself, tells him with something close to satisfaction that I've relocated for work and left no forwarding information. I don't know any of this happened until months later. At the time, all I know is silence, his text stopping abruptly sometime in my 2nd month in Busan. No explanation, nothing, and some small, humiliated part of me reads that silence as confirmation of everything I already believed. That I was right to leave. That I was never going to be more than something that happened to him in the middle of a crisis he needed saving from. I don't know he spent 3 weeks searching a country he had no leads in. I don't know he finally stopped only because a Kang Holdings lawyer warned him that continuing to chase down a former employee who'd resigned under a cloud of company scandal could be read, by the wrong journalist, as something far uglier than heartbreak, coercion, harassment, exactly the kind of story that could finish what the whistleblower complaint started. I just know that by the 4th month, alone in a small rented apartment overlooking a harbor I chose because it was as far from Seoul as I could get without leaving the country entirely, my hands resting against a belly that's finally, unmistakably beginning to curve, I've stopped checking my phone for his name. I tell myself that's healing. It doesn't feel like healing. It feels like the last brick going back into the wall, except this time when I press my palm flat against my stomach in the dark and feel the smallest possible flutter of movement answer back. I understand, with a grief too large for the small apartment to hold, that the wall was never going to keep this out. Some part of him is inside me now, permanently, whether either of us ever speaks again or not. And it's on that thought, quiet, terrible, unshakable, that my phone lights up on the nightstand with a number I don't recognize, a Seoul area code, and beneath it, 3 words that stop my heart cold in my chest. It's about Tiju. I don't remember dialing the number back. I remember standing in the middle of my apartment with the phone against my ear, my whole body gone still and cold, listening to a woman introduce herself as a nurse from Seoul General. He's stable, she says before I can ask, and something in my chest unclenches half an inch. He was in an accident 3 days ago. A car came off the road on the way back from his family's estate in Yongpyeong. He's been asking for someone named Han Yusung since he woke up. We couldn't find contact information anywhere except an old visitor log from months ago. I'm sorry to call so late. 3 days, he's been lying in a hospital bed for 3 days, and I've been 400 kilometers away, checking my phone for a name I told myself I'd stopped waiting for. I booked the first flight to Seoul the next morning without letting myself think past the act of booking it. He looks smaller than I remember. That's the first thing that undoes me, standing in the doorway of his hospital room, not the bandage across his temple, not the brace on his arm, but the sheer smallness of him against the white sheets. This man who has never once let me see him anything less than composed, stripped down to something raw and human by a body that finally couldn't hold the line for him. His eyes open, For a long moment, neither of us says anything, and I feel the old instinct rise in me, turn, leave, protect what's left, but my feet don't move, and the flutter low in my belly, faint and constant these past weeks, feels suddenly like the only honest thing in the room. "You came," he says, voice rough with disuse. "I heard you were asking for me." I keep my arms crossed, keep the door of the room between us like it might still save me. "That's not the same as coming for you." Something flickers across his face, hurt, and beneath it, something that looks almost like relief that I'm here to hurt at all. "The lawyers told me not to look for you again, said it could be used against the company in the whistleblower case." I listened for exactly 2 months before I stopped being able to. He shifts against the pillows, wincing. "I was driving back from Yongpyong when it happened. I'd just come from telling my grandfather I was done. All of it, the shares, the succession, the seat he spent my whole life grooming me for. I told him I was stepping down." "I don't move. Why would you do that?" "Because every terrible thing that happened between us happened because I let that family decide who I was allowed to love before I ever got the chance to choose it myself." His hand, the one not in the brace, reaches slowly for the drawer of the bedside table, and he pulls out a folded document, holding it out toward me with visible effort. "That's the dissolution. Notarized 2 days before the accident. I don't run Kang Holdings anymore. I don't answer to my grandfather anymore. There's no contract left standing between us. There hasn't been for months, but I need you to see it. I need you to know I did it before I found out you were even still alive to come back to, because I couldn't keep asking you to trust promises I hadn't already paid for." My hands are shaking when I take the paper from him, and I don't read a word of it. I don't need to. It's not the document that undoes me. It's the fact that he's watching me with the same open, unguarded fear he had the night the suppressants failed. No composure left to hide behind. Nothing between us now but every ugly true thing that happened. "You still lied to me," I say, and my voice cracks on it. "Long before any of this, you let me fall for you while you were promised to someone else, and I don't think a piece of paper undoes that. I don't think an accident in a hospital bed undoes that either." I know. He doesn't flinch from it. "It doesn't. I'm not asking you to forgive 6 days of silence with 1 afternoon of proof. I know what it cost us. I know I let fear make a decision that should have been yours to make with me not around you." His voice breaks on the last word, and for the first time since I've known him, I watch Kang Tae-ju cry, not composed, not careful, just a man in a hospital bed who has run out of every kind of armor he ever had. "I just need you to know I'm not the same person who let that happen. I gave up everything that made it possible for my family to do that to us again. There's nothing left for anyone to hold over either of us. Whatever happens next, it has to be because you choose it, not because you're protecting yourself from something that isn't there anymore." The silence stretches long enough that I can hear the monitor beside his bed, steady and slow, and I think about 9 years of walls and a locked door, and a name on a phone screen that broke something in me I thought was already unbreakable. I think about the small, constant flutter under my palm every night in Busan, and how it never once felt like something to regret, even in my worst hour. "I'm pregnant," I say finally, and watch it land on him like a wave breaking. "For months, I wasn't going to tell you. I'd made peace with never telling you." His whole body goes still, and then slowly, unmistakably, something in his face cracks open, not shock, not panic, but a grief and a wonder tangled together so completely I can't separate them. "Yusung." "Don't." I hold up a hand before he can say anything that sounds like a promise he hasn't earned yet. "I'm not here because of the document. I'm not here because of the baby either, though God knows that's part of it now. I'm here because I got on a plane the second I heard your name, before I let myself think about a single reason not to, and that terrifies me more than anything you've ever done to me." I step closer, finally, close enough to reach for his good hand, my fingers trembling as they find his. "That has to mean something. I don't know yet if it means I forgive you, but it means I'm not ready to walk away without finding out." He turns his hand over to hold mine properly, careful, like I might still change my mind, and when I lean down and press my forehead to his, feeling his breath shudder out unsteady against my skin, it isn't a kiss yet, it's smaller than that and larger too. It's a door, cracked open on my own terms this time, with my eyes fully open to everything it cost to get here. "Then let me earn the rest," he whispers, "however long it takes." I don't answer with words. I answer by sitting on the edge of that narrow hospital bed until the nurses come to shoo me out for the night, by coming back the next morning and the one after that, slow and unhurried and entirely unafraid for the first time in 9 years. And somewhere in the weeks that follow, in a small apartment with a view of nothing spectacular at all, the door I locked so carefully after everything finally, quietly stays open.